All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Warm weather is in full effect, man. This is a really nice day out. And so with the warm weather comes the thoughts of potentially taking your nice shiny new bike to the track. So this video is going to be for some of you guys who are thinking about taking your bike to the track for the first time, and then also maybe for some of you guys who've done a couple track days but haven't done a whole lot just yet. So there's going to be some what I think are useful tips in here for that as well. A little bit of preface: I am not by any stretch of the imagination an expert when it comes to riding at the track. I am still in the novice group. At the end of the season last season, I was kind of at the faster side of the novice group. My fastest lap around Barber was something like 156, which I know some guys that are guys and girls who are in the A group who are going, you know, just a little bit faster than that on like 400s. So, you know, I'm not going to claim to be the fastest or the most knowledgeable, but at the same time, I have learned some stuff that I think may be useful for some of you guys. So I'm going to share. So I'm going to start with the people who have never been to a track day before, or maybe you've only been to one or two and you're looking for some tips on how to make track days a little bit easier. Anybody who's ever done a motorcycle track day, especially in the summertime, especially on the East Coast, you know that, you know, there's high humidity, and especially in like June, July, August, something like that, where it's kind of prime track day season, it gets pretty damn hot and pretty damn uncomfortable. And so that's the hardest part of doing track days, is just kind of fighting the heat, trying to stay cool. Keep in mind that when you get too hot, your judgment gets worse and worse. And so one of the things you start to see is that people start to crash when the temperature goes up. They're just not making good decisions. Maybe they're a little dehydrated and their thinking process is a little bit slow or a little bit more erratic than it would be when they're a little bit more hydrated. So that's kind of the first point that I would bring up, is make sure you bring lots and lots and lots of water. Bring like an entire 24 pack of water bottles. If there's, you know, you and a spouse or you and a friend, bring more than that. It seems like overkill, but at least in my experience, you'll be glad that you had it. Bring it in a cooler, and it's a little bit more work, but get some ice for the cooler before you head to the track. You will not regret it. Like I said, the extra 5 minutes that it takes to get some ice before you go to the track, to have an ice cold water when you come off of a session, it makes life so much easier. Other things that I would bring fans. So, you know, if you're really, really hot, you can dump the water on yourself. And then if you have a fan, it'll help blow the water off, and that's how your body takes away heat. So it'll dramatically help cool you off. Other things that I've used in the past are things like some of those squeegee towel kind of things. Yeah, they're supposed to be super absorbent. Get those things, like dip them in ice water and then lay them over your neck or over your head, and it helps pull the heat out real fast. You're basically just going to be soaked all day, whether it's from sweat or it's from, you know, water or whatever, from like dumping it over you to try to stay cool. So just, you know, be prepared for the fact that you're just going to be wet all day. One other thing to kind of keep in mind is, because you're going to be wet all day, your suit's going to be wet all day as well. And so if you're going back for the next day, if it's a 2-day track kind of thing, make sure you bring a hanger to hang up your suit so that it can air out a little bit. If you have a fan or something like that to help dry it out that way, it'll help it not smell as bad, and it'll also help keep it from getting moldy. So, you know, I miss this turn every time. So like I said, it'll help keep your suit from getting moldy, which, you know, that's the worst. Other things, bring a canopy. Canopy makes all the difference in the world. You can have some shade. You can have some shade for you, and also you can have some shade for your bike, because getting back on your bike after it's been sitting out in the hot sun, when you're getting ready to go out and wait on pit lane. Waiting on pit lane when you're getting ready to go out is the worst part of any track day. And so anything you can do to kind of reduce the temperature there is going to make a big difference. So even if it's like a 5% difference here and a 5% difference there, it all adds up after a while. And you know, that small difference can be, like I said, the difference between whether you're, you know, not riding well, whether you get hurt on track or something like that because you're, like, you know, dehydrated and making bad choices. So along with the Canopy, bring weights. They make these like C-shaped weights that you can just put over the legs for your Canopy, and it'll hold the Canopy down. It will keep it from moving, and especially when it rains and everything else, like the last thing you want is for your Canopy to blow away and all your crap to get wet. The other thing that you can get for your Canopy is they make like sun shades that you can attach to the sides of your Canopy, and it makes it like almost a kind of enclosed tent kind of thing. That makes a big difference because it helps keep the sun off you, helps keep you from getting sunburnt, helps keep you from overheating. And then also those sunshades provide a place for you to put stuff, so you can bring like snacks and water bottles and stuff like that and put them in the little pockets in those sunshades, and that's pretty dope. So definitely do that. Keys. Everybody will talk about, like, the last thing you want to do is forget your keys at home, and you get there after you spend all this time and money driving down there and paying for the track day and hotel, or, you know, if you sleep at the track and whatever, and then get down there and not have the keys for your bike and be pretty much SOL. So what I do is I actually have at least 2 sets of keys for every bike that I have, and I will keep a spare set of keys in the truck basically at all times. So even if I forget my main set of keys, I know that there's a spare set in the bike, or in the truck, excuse me. And so it makes it essentially impossible for me to forget my keys during a track day. Another thing related to keys, you'll see that people will forget to take the key out of their bike or turn the key off in their bike, and they'll just let it sit there between sessions, and the battery will die. And now, you know, you're trying to get ready for the next session, you realize the battery's dead, and you're scrambling, and it's like you're gonna forget stuff, trying to find somebody who can jump start your bike and all this other crap. What I would recommend, I bought one of those combination air compressors / jump start units, and so it's super helpful because you can set your tire pressure with that, and also it's super helpful because if you accidentally forget the key in the bike and kill the battery, then you can jump start the bike and you're not just, you know, SOL. And so that's another point. The tire pressure that you run in your bike on the streets is probably not going to work very well for running on the track. If you're really new to the track, you're probably not going to be running at that much different of a pace than you do on the street, but you will still notice that your tires will become shredded on the track, even if you think you're not really going much faster. And so my very first track day, it actually shredded my tires pretty good, even though I was probably not going that much faster. Arguably, I'd gone faster, like in just a straight line on the street, but you're on the brakes and on the gas a lot more frequently on the track than you are in just normal everyday road riding. Your tire temperatures are going to increase, which means that your tire pressures are going to increase, which means that the smart thing to do is to drop your tire pressures to start with, so that when the tire pressures do go up, they go back up to a pretty normal temperature. And if you're a new track rider, this is probably only a couple PSI. If you are, you know, a more intermediate or experienced track rider, then it could be pretty significant. You might actually see a pretty large change in tire pressure from the beginning of the session to the end. So, like I said, this video is geared towards new track riders, so I don't expect most of you guys are going to have that problem, but just be aware that as you continue in your track riding career, it will become more and more of a problem if you get faster and faster. So one of the things that I learned doing track days, I knew before I went in, but the actual application of it is different than just simply knowing, and that is turning your head. So turning your head, when I first started doing track days, I was overshooting corners, just coming in too hot. I was missing the right braking marker, and then not turning in at the right place, and then just, you know, making a mess out of the corners. And one of the instructors told me, they said, like, what you need to do is you need to start looking into the corners further and earlier, because your brain doesn't have enough information to make a plan on how to tackle this corner if you're not looking into it, right? You need to give your brain all the information that it needs ahead of time to make decisions before you get there. And that way, you know, you won't overcook corners, because you'll be kind of tracking the corner and realize, oh, I need to start braking, or oh, I need to start turning, that kind of thing. And so, I can't emphasize this enough. Always, 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 always look into the corner. It's one thing to say that, it's another thing to do it. The first time you go and do a track day, you're probably going to do the same thing, but if you're blowing corners, you're going in too hot, just realize that it could be that you're not looking far enough ahead up the road. So I wish I knew that ahead of time. It would have probably saved me a couple sessions and made me a little bit more predictable of a rider on the track. For anybody who is looking at doing their very first track day, get there a little bit early. So most of the time, I would say find out when the gates open and plan on getting there as soon as possible. I'd get there a little bit before the gates open and be waiting, because that way when you get there, you can figure out, where do I park? Where do I set up my stuff? Where is deck inspection? And where is the riders meeting beforehand? What time is the riders meeting? And you can just kind of generally figure out where are the bathrooms, where, if there are any concession stands or anything like that. You know, get the lay of the land beforehand, and that way you're not trying to figure it out between sessions when you're getting tired and everything else. You will never regret having more time than you thought you needed. Another thing I'll say is, if you're doing a track day for your first time on a leader bike, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just going to go ahead and say this. There are things that you can do on a leader bike that you just cannot do on a 600 or a 400 or most of the other bikes that people bring to the track. And so just because you can doesn't mean you should. So let me give an example of this. One track day that I did, there's a guy on a leader bike who he wanted to pass the people in front of him, and they were kind of split on both sides of the track. So he just rolled into the throttle and then split between the two of them on a straight. Most track day organizations don't actually explicitly have rules that say you can't do that. And I think probably if you're in the intermediate or advanced groups, that's probably going to be a little bit more common. But if you're in the beginner group, you might be out there with people who are like day one on a racetrack, and they are going to be unpredictable. You could hit them with a very high closing speed, and that is how people get killed on track. Fatalities on track, from what I understand from the people I've talked to, are fairly rare. But most of them have said it's riders colliding on track, or, you know, I wouldn't even say like hitting a stationary object, because most of the stationary objects on track are foam barriers and stuff. And I've seen people peg those pretty hard and walk away from it. A lot of times it's going to be getting hit by a motorcycle when you're not on your motorcycle anymore. Say that you got high-sided or something like that and you're in the middle of the track, and you get hit by another rider. Same thing goes also for if one rider hits another rider and there's a really big closing speed between the two of them. Just be smart about it. Realize you might be a fantastic rider, but a lot of the other people on the track might not be. So ride while keeping the lowest skill level of everybody else on the track in mind. You might be in the right, and you might also still be dead, so it doesn't really help you in the long run, right? So while I'm here in these corners, I'm going to talk about a tip for the people who have done a couple more track days. See if we can get around this guy. All right. So for the people that have done 1 or 2 track days and you're starting to get the hang of it and you're starting to figure out, one of the biggest things that I see frequently is head position. You see people kind of riding crossed up. All the instructors tell you that you need to be getting off the bike, and so they're trying to get their lower half off the bike, like approximately 1 butt cheek, and that's great. But ultimately your whole goal with getting off the bike is to move the center of mass of you and the bike to the inside of the corner. You see a lot of people that they'll get their lower body off of the bike, but then they'll still center their upper body over the center line of the bike. And so you're not actually really moving your center of mass that much when you do that. And it makes it an uncomfortable and unsteady riding position. So one of the things I recommend to people is, right now, my arm and my chest, when I'm going around these corners, my arm and my chest are on the tank. Like, they're physically touching the tank. And so what that does is it does 2 things. Number one, I guarantee in order to be able to get your arm and your chest on the tank, you have to be moving your body outside of the center line of the bike. And number 2, by resting a little bit of my weight on the tank, it frees up my hands so that I'm not balancing myself with my hands and trying to steer the bike. I'm only balancing myself with my chest and my arms on the tank. I want my hands to only be responsible for controlling the bike, right? I want them to be only responsible for steering the bike. How can you tell if you're kind of out on the inside of the bike far enough? Well, if your outside arm is more or less straight, if it's more or less straight and draped over the tank, then you physically have to be positioned in a way that you're on the inside of the tank. When I really positioned myself to the point where I could feel my arm and chest touch the tank, it was like a light bulb came on. It was like an epiphany moment. Here, watch. When we're making this corner, we're turning our head. We're turning it to look where we're trying to go. We need the information. We need the information of where we're going, and it'll help us feel more stable. It'll help us figure out where to brake appropriately, everything. This makes turns, especially the sharp turns that you'll find on racetracks that you don't typically find on public streets. It makes those turns a lot easier. Also, I think one of the reasons why people don't get their upper body off of the bike is, A, I think they don't know how far they should be getting their upper body off the bike, and then also it feels kind of weird to be hanging off a bike this much, you know, while you're going through a corner or while leaning at high speed. And so by getting your chest down on the tank, it helps feel more stable. It helps make it a little bit easier mentally to lean off the bike that much. Pro racers, right? Like a lot of your MotoGP guys, your Moto America guys, your World Superbike guys, they're back behind the bubble as much as they possibly can be throughout the entire race, with the exception of in hard braking zones where they're trying to use their body for drag. Other than that, they're down, you know what I mean? They are leaned over the whole time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and I use the term loosely, I think I'm going to cut this one off. It's getting a little bit long-winded.
There's plenty more that I'd like to talk about, but I think I'm gonna save that for a part 2 video because I'm boring some of you guys to death, I can tell. The next thing I want to talk about as well is how to do track riding more affordably. People come up to me all the time and say, I'd love to go to the track, but I don't think I can afford to go. And don't get me wrong, yeah, it can be expensive, but there are certainly ways that you can reduce the cost if you're willing to make a couple sacrifices to go out there and do it. And I'd love to talk about that. I want everybody who wants to go to the track to be able to go to the track. We'll talk about that next time. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you found any value in it, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I really personally appreciate it. So, all right, guys, as usual, have fun, ride safe, don't f it up.